I didn't think we'd be talking about Stanley Johnson in 2023 still.
This might be the most painful conversation we have in the history of the podcast. It hurts me to talk about this. It really does. Were you a big fan of his when he came out of the NBA, out of college, when the Pistons drafted him?
I mean, for the most part, yeah. Like, I remember it was like Stanley Johnson and Justice Winslow.
Yep.
And there was I don't want to say there was not a single person talking about Devin Booker, because I do think there were like a small flock of fans, but not how it is today. Like,
Yeah.
I always see like fans, like, they wait until a player's to go and say, told you we should have drafted Devin Booker. Told you we should have drafted Donovan Mitchell. It's just like, you were saying that during the whole draft process, but I don't know. Like, I thought it was either going to be Stanley Johnson or Justice Winslow. Those were the two like small forwards I was looking at coming out of college.
Who did you want more between the two? Because I was a huge Justice Winslow fan. That's who I wanted the Pistons to draft at number 8.
I wanted Justice Winslow, but something about Stanley Johnson's defense just kind of screamed Detroit. So that's who I wanted. But yeah, man, it's kind of crazy that people are calling him a bust.
Well, he called himself a bust, didn't he? On the interview, he said that he was a bust in Detroit.
He was asked, "Do you consider yourself a bust?" And he said, he's like, "I tried. I did my best. Like, I wasn't happy with how it ended in Detroit, and I can respect that for him taking accountability. But I never really considered him a bust. I thought him defending LeBron the way he did at such a young age, I was hopeful. I don't blame his tenure solely on him. I blame it more on the organization and coaching.
I will, man, as much as I wanted Justice Winslow, I was a fan of Stanley Johnson. I was super, like, I mean, way before I had a podcast, my buddy had texted me and he's like, "What do you think about Stanley Johnson?" This was, like I said, way before the podcast. I went back and I read the text. I remember this conversation and I said, I called him the next Ron Artest with a splash of Grant Hill. That's what I thought Stanley Johnson was when he got drafted. Because, like you were saying, the defense, he was 240 pounds just of muscle coming out of college. And I thought he was going to be a good one coming out of Arizona. And maybe the Grant Hill was, I mean, actually both comparisons are pretty ridiculous now looking back at it. But the Grant Hill one, because I mean, remember his highlight tape from high school, just how insane he looked against just average high school athletes. He looked great. And that's probably where the Grant Hill stuff came in. Maybe the rebounding too. I don't know. But my biggest knock on him, and let me just really quick say, I do think he was a bust in Detroit. I mean, going 8th overall, there were some ridiculous expectations for him. It just somehow didn't work. You could blame it on coaching. You could blame it on the injury. You could just blame it just playing in the city of Detroit, as some people would like to say. But my biggest knock on Stanley Johnson in his time in Detroit was finishing in the half court, man. I've talked about this before. He was soft going to the against smaller players. I think that was his biggest knock. It seemed like there was a real fear of him going to the rim against taller players. I don't know if he was afraid of contact or not. I mean, nobody likes to get hit in the face, but it felt like with his athleticism, his length at that 3 spot, that quick first step, he could get to the rim, but he had a hard time finishing up and over and through people. And I felt like he settled a lot with his floater, with the layups, and that's really what cost him more. And that's why I label him a bust with his time in Detroit, just because of that. Everything else was fine. I felt like the jumper was good. I felt like the dribble could have been tighter, but I kind of felt like at some point he could have kind of been like a point forward. Maybe you wouldn't want him running the offense, but with the handle and the athleticism, you could see him just picking some guys apart on defense. But it was that finishing. That was the biggest thing for me.
The reason why I said I don't consider him a bust was because of Stan Van Gundy, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
During his rookie year, if he made one single mistake, whether that was maybe he took a bad shot from, maybe it was a bad three-pointer, maybe he missed a defensive assignment, maybe it was a backdoor cut he missed, Van Gundy never really let him learn from a mistake like a Coach Casey did. Like, if he made a mistake, he was on the bench. And sometimes it does work for certain players where they can watch and say, oh, okay, that's how I'm supposed to do it. But other players, which I feel if you let Stanley Johnson learn through a mistake, maybe his career would have panned out a little bit differently. I know for me personally, if someone yells at me for making a mistake and I don't get to learn through that experience, I'm going to screw up again.
Yeah.
Like, that's just my thought process. And I don't even want to bring this up, but his mom passed away right after he got drafted. And that was probably really hard on him mentally to even, go to training camp, like he did mention in that podcast interview. So I think it was more of the coaching and Van Gundy just using him as a spot up shooter when he wasn't a 3-point shooter coming out of college. Like, that was not his strength. Like, they just put him in the corner to spot up from three. So that's why I don't really consider him a bust. I think it was more of an organizational failure of trying to make him something that he's not. Kind of like how the Pistons did with Sadiq Bey. Like, what we talked about it this year. Like, the Pistons did the same thing with Sadiq Bey. To stand in the corner and shoot threes. We want you to be a 3-level scorer. Like, I think it's more of the Pistons not being able to develop these guys coming out of college, and Van Gundy just saying, "Hey, like, if you're gonna make a mistake, you're gonna be on the bench."
Yeah, no, that's all fair, and I believe it's an accumulate. Wow, I can't even say that word. It's just all these different things that factor into Stanley Johnson being a bust in Detroit. It wasn't just if I'm talking about him specifically as a player. I felt like the finishing was the reason that was harder for him. I felt like he ended up settling more on offense. But you're right, Stan Van Gundy. I remember those games. He didn't give him a fair chance. You were right. There were times he would play, I feel like, for a minute. He maybe would run up and down the court once, 2, 3 times, and then he's right back on the bench. And I'm the same way. If you're going to yell at me, like, show me and then teach me so then I can apply it the next time, whatever I'm doing. Just don't scream at me and, I don't know, make me an example, I guess. Try to teach me so I can actually learn from the mistakes, or give me the experience to do it. I'm the same way. So I don't blame it all on Stanley Johnson, but there are things that are in his power that he can control where it could have changed. But do you think if he had been drafted to another organization, his career turns out differently? Because I was thinking, man, if he goes to Miami or if he goes to Toronto, one of those teams, maybe it's a little different for him.
I think situation is everything. I look at a team like San Antonio, who we always joke saying, like, hey, if Stanley Johnson went to San Antonio, he'd be a monster. Pop would get him right. I think if he did get drafted by another organization, a good organization, I want to say, you mentioned a few: Miami, Toronto. You can even throw Denver in the mix. I think situation is everything. I just think if you look at the Detroit Pistons history since the Darko draft, the Pistons really haven't developed any of their first round draft picks. And a lot of them are out of the league. Like, the only 2 first round draft picks that are still in the league since like 2010 are KCP and Luke Kennard. If you look at it, like, the Pistons, they just don't develop talent, and usually those players are out of the league within a 5-year span. So it's more of a development focus, but I still think he could be a player in the NBA because I think his defense is something that a lot of teams need. Like, he could have a PJ Tucker role all day.
Yeah, that was the thing about him, versatility defensively. Like, when he was coming out of college, he could seriously defend like 1 through 4, depending on who was playing at the 4 and depending on who was playing at the 1. And he does have the right size to be a modern 4 in today's NBA in a smallish role. But who knows? I mean, he's still in his mid-20s. Like, he's not very old at all. I don't even think he's 28. And I mean, there's still a chance. He had that nice little run with the Los Angeles Lakers, but I don't know. For Stanley Johnson, he was a bust for me in Detroit.
Okay.
Whatever he's doing now, I hope it works out for him.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every NBA player is doing a podcast these days, and I love it because it's entertaining because I get to learn about what actually goes on. Like, Jeff Teague's my new favorite podcast, by the way.
Oh, he's
the
amazing.
520 Club is the funniest podcast, and there's no debate.
I wouldn't even want to debate you. But we can move on to news.
Okay, let's get it.
So we got ESPN's power rankings, and I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to really argue with it based on how the Pistons ended, how their season went. 17 wins sucks, but that's why they're ranked 30th. I mean, it would be kind of weird for them to rank them any higher. I don't know why people were complaining about the Pistons, being ranked 30th. But where do you see them being ranked at towards the end of? I mean, I guess throughout they're starting at 30 at the beginning of the season. Where do you see them at the end of the season?
It's so funny. I thought you would have been way more upset.
No,
it's kind of surprising me a little bit. But to answer your question, they're ranked 30th right now. And I think it's a fair rating by ESPN. I know I saw a lot of comments saying like, oh, they're just hating us, Detroit versus everybody. Like, we lost 65 games last year. And the only free agent signing we've made is Zavier Simpson, who we're going to talk about a little bit later in the podcast. But I think it's a fair rating. Like, you didn't really make a huge splash in free agency. You used your cap space on Joe Harris and Monte Morris. Like, and I feel like those are two players that can contribute. But I understand why ESPN had that ranking. Where I could possibly see them, I could see them where the Pacers are at. I could see them in like 21.
Yeah.
I honestly could. I'm not going to say they're going to be a top 10 team because those top 10 teams are making deep playoff runs. But I think they could sneak into the top 20s with the healthy Cade Cunningham this year, with an Asar Thompson, with the Monte Morris backing up Cade Cunningham, Monty Williams coaching these young guys. Like, I think you could sneak into the top 20 in power rankings. I just think as Pistons fans, we got to do a better job. Stop being so sensitive every time ESPN shits on us or an outlet shits on us. Like, they'll get those jokes off because we're not winning basketball games. Winning cures all, you guys. Once we start winning, you're going to start getting more nationally televised games by ESPN. You're going to start getting in those top 15 rankings. Once we start winning, you're not going to see ESPN or even we talked about last week, Matt Barnes talking shit. All these, media personalities and media companies are going to start showing the Detroit Pistons some love. So as soon as we get those wins up, we'll be more respectable around the NBA.
I'm actually a little shocked you thought I would be in my feelings about this. I have no problem with ESPN ranking him number 30. It's not a big deal to me. I think they get as high as 24. And that's if every NBA team stays relatively healthy for the NBA season. Because I could see them being better than the Washington Wizards. I mean, they did get Jordan Poole. They still got Kyle Kuzma. Tyus Jones is there now. Pretty solid little core right there, I guess. But I don't know if it wins you many games. Portland, I mean, they do have a lot of young guys, but they still got Dame right now. And I doubt he sits out. I'm sure if he really loves basketball, he'll be playing. Charlotte, I could see the Pistons being better than them just because LaMelo's coming back from an injury. I know Cade is too, but I think top to bottom, Detroit, honestly, I think they have a better roster than Charlotte. And then San Antonio, they got Wemby, but they also got Keldon Johnson and Vassell. So they got a good squad. I'm going to give them that. Toronto, that's a hit or miss team for me as well. But I could see the Pistons being better than them. And there's a few more teams on here that I can see the Pistons being better than. But I think the Pistons, if every NBA team stays healthy, which that's not going to happen, I could see the Pistons being ranked as high as 24, possibly even like number 22, maybe even 21, what you're saying. Like, I really am optimistic about this going into this season with this roster if they stay healthy. But man, they have we'll get into this next spot, but Mark J. Spears, what did he say? He said he could see the Pistons being a play-in team or pushing for the play-in team. I agree with him on this. If the Pistons can stay healthy and I don't want this to happen, but if the injury bug hits other NBA teams, you could see the Pistons climbing up the ladder of the standings, and sneaking potentially into the playoff. I mean, you only got to have a 10th. You only got to be the 10th seed to get into the play-in. So, I mean, I get it's a huge leap, but other teams are going to not meet their standards, whether it's due to injuries or players, having a rough start or whatever. There's so many different factors that could play into why a team doesn't live up to their standards. So I agree with Mark Spears, but what about you?
I was kind of surprised we did get some, national love
Yeah, that's
from
surprising.
from them. And it's funny because when he said that, Zach Lowe completely disagreed with them on that segment. He said, no, Pistons are not going to be a play-in team. They're probably going to be drafting in the lottery again. Which, even if you're 10th, you're maybe drafting in the late lottery, like 14. I think they could push for the play-in spot. You don't hire a coach like Monty Williams to get a top 5 pick. They want to turn this around. They don't want to be a Philadelphia 76ers. They don't want to be this, the Sam Hinkie tanking 76ers where they're just trying to accumulate talent and just, throwing something on the wall, seeing if it sticks. I think if everyone's healthy, this team 100% could push for the play-in. You have a mix of young players and you have vets. And you added 2 more vets that can impact winning and they can help you out on the perimeter. So I think play-in to me should be the goal for this team. That's what they should set for. They should try to push for that play-in spot because even if you are a 10 seed, that would be such an accomplishment for this team because they've been bottom feeders in the Eastern Conference since Troy Weaver's gotten here, since he's gutted this whole roster and rebuilt. If you're making a play-in, I can guarantee you Pistons fans are very pleased and excited for the team's future.
And for all the fans and Zach Lowe thinking that could be impossible, the first year of the play-in, 2020 to 2021 season, the Charlotte Hornets made the play-in as the 10th seed with 33 wins. So anything is possible. Every season is going to be different. I think this last season, the last play-in team was a 40-win team. They were 40 wins, so 7 more than the first year they had it. But if things go sour for teams, you could sneak in with just a few wins over 30 to get into the play-in. So it's not impossible. Shout out to Mark Spears for showing some love to Detroit. We know we don't get it very often. Love to see it. And I don't know, there's a chance. Again, like if the Pistons stay healthy and those guys, Jaden Ivey, Duren, Cade, they all take that next step, which we all believe they can. This team is a better team. They have a lot of proven NBA talent, way more than they had in past seasons. So I don't think the plan is, it's still a long shot. I wouldn't say it's impossible for this year for the Detroit Pistons. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, like for me as a fan, I think that should be the goal.
Yeah.
And I think if you would ask the players, they probably want to make the play-in too. I just think you're going to see a team try. I remember I told you this past year that I tuned out in March because it wasn't meaningful basketball. We had G League guys starting or playing meaningful minutes. I think they're going to be playing meaningful basketball all 82 games. They're actually going to try. I think it'll be very similar to when Van Gundy got here. They won 32 games their first year. They were trying. And I think that's what you're going to see with Monty Williams. He's going to try to get this team in a position to get a play-in spot. And I think it's possible. I won't be disappointed if they don't make the play-in. If they're flirting like with 11, 12 seed, to me, that's progress. Just keep making progress each and every year. And I think Pistons fans would be happy. Because we both know this city, when they have a winner, they will back you 110%. The city is so starving for the Pistons to be good.
I mean, even if they think there's a little hope, they show up. Remember, I think it was Cade's first game. I don't know if it was a sellout, but I was at that game. And, yeah, it was a pretty impressive crowd. Cade didn't have the best game, but the fans showed up for that game. Sure.
They were 12th in attendance this year, and they were the worst team in basketball. Yeah. Like, the city is starving for a winner. Like, you get this team winning basketball games, they're probably top 5 in attendance.
Oh my God, I can't wait. They will be, though. You're absolutely right. 12th last year, people were still showing up. And then if you put more of a winning product out, which we both agree, we think that's going to – there's no way the Pistons win less than 17 games. They're only going up. That is the absolute worst I think we will see from the Pistons for the next few seasons. Probably even honestly the next decade, as long as everything goes right. I don't see them getting 15 wins or anything like that anytime soon. So I really think, what was it? I think it was at 27 and a half is what Vegas has them at, or 28, something like that. And we both said the over. We both think there's going to be a lot more winning done this year for the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, I said 33 to 35 would probably be where I would bet at, because I think it's doable with the new coaching staff, with Cade Cunningham coming back, a guy that was averaging 20 points on one leg. Give him two legs, who knows what he averages, right? So I think the future is bright. I'm excited for this basketball team, and it's going to be August next week. So we still have another month or so before training camp starts, and we get all these videos. Like James Wiseman just posted a video working out with this trainer and got me excited watching it, man. I miss basketball.
Speaking of the future here in Detroit, Jalen Duren selected for Team USA Select along with Cade Cunningham. Herbert Jones was also added to the roster. I think we talked about it a little bit last week. I think it's huge, not only for Duren, not only for the Detroit, but for the fans. We were all right about this young guy being an absolute player in the NBA. Team USA, they noticed it. They want him, and he is here to stay for a little while. And I think, man, we just got done talking about like what we can't wait for the season. This news got me more excited for the start of the season, though. But what are your thoughts about Duren being named to Team USA Select?
Well, I do want to give a little shout out to someone that did predict it before Shams Charania.
Okay.
Give a shout out to Sean Murphy. He called this right after draft night, by the way. So shout out to him, friend of the show, and he's been on here before. But I love it. I absolutely love it, because he's going to be practicing with Chet Holmgren, who I think is going to be an absolute stud this season.
Yeah.
He's my pick for Rookie of the Year. I've already placed a bet. So I love this for Duren. I think he's going to get so much experience playing with high-level players alongside with Cade. They can even, build their chemistry even more, because they really didn't get to play last year together. They really didn't get to share the floor together. So they're actually going to be able to work out together. Maybe they're going to be on the same team. Maybe they won't. But I think this is such a good experience for both of these guys that they're going to come into Pistons training camp with maybe a little edge, maybe a little bit more confidence playing with some of the up-and-coming young players in the NBA. And I even saw Langston Galloway is going to be on the select team as well. So shout out to Langston.
Yeah, and in practice, though, we're going up against Team USA. He's going to go up against Jaren Jackson Jr., reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Bobby Portis. I believe Walker Kessler is on Team USA as well. He's a hell of a rim protector. There's just going to be a lot of great battles for Jalen Duren, where he's going to come back during training camp and preseason and start of the regular year with just a ton of experience. He is going to eat this season, and this is invaluable what is going to happen for him and Cade Cunningham. I'm just so excited for these guys. I wonder, like, if you had to put, I guess, odds on it, who do you think would be most likely to get called up if there's injury between Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham? Now, obviously, if there's a big man, it's probably going to be Duren, but I don't know. Who do you think would be most likely to get the call up? Let's just say if there's like a player that could play on the perimeter and in the post.
I think it would be between Chet and Duren. Now, it depends if they want to go, right? But for this purpose of this question, I would say it'd be between those two, because I think the bigs are like Bobby Portis, and I want to say Miles Turner, but I'm not 100% correct. I don't remember the full senior U.S. team roster, but I think if Duren got called up, it would be great for him. You get to play with Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton as your point guards. I think just what he could learn from them, catching lobs from them, protecting the paint, I think it would be great for his development to play with some high-level players.
So for the bigs on Team USA, it's Walker Kessler, Bobby Portis, Jaren Jackson Jr.,
Okay.
and we'll throw in Paolo Banchero too. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if like a Brandon Ingram or a Cameron Johnson goes down, I could see them. If we're just talking about Duren and Cade, I'm not going to keep it simple, but just between those two, because I don't know. It'd probably be, I don't know. I guess it would probably be Cade just because he's the more skilled player. But I mean, if there's a big man, it's pretty easy. It'd probably be Duren or Chet. You're right. Let's bring on to the next part of the news, though, the final piece.
Okay.
And that is the Pistons signing Zavier Simpson, a.k.a. Captain Hook.
You mean Simpson?
Simpson. Why did I? Yeah. Wow. Sorry, reading a bunch of names right now. Captain Hook being brought in for an Exhibit 10. They kind of made it seem like it was a 1-year deal. Not, I don't know. They were kind of freaking me out. I thought, what the heck are we doing here? But it's just a training camp. I don't think he makes the Pistons roster. I think in 4 games in the NBA, his stats are 11 points, 7.5 assists. We'll round up to 8, 5 rebounds, which is crazy because he's only like 5'9", and 1 steal per game and a block in 4 NBA games. But for the Lakeland Magic, now it's the Asila. If I'm saying the wrong, my bad.
So stupid.
He averaged 17 points, 9 assists, 2 steals across 32 games, but he shot 52, 47, and then 58% from the line. So shooting numbers are way better in the G League. I think that's the thing that holds him back the most is just he never really had a 3-point shot. I mean, he's more known for the hook shot more than anything else, but he's getting an Exhibit 10 deal with the Detroit Pistons. And he's not the first Michigan point guard we've seen. We've seen Derek Wallen get some run with the Pistons, I believe, last season. So I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. It's a long shot for him to make the roster, but what are your thoughts?
So when I saw the Chris B. Haynes tweet, because it said a 1-year deal, so I had reached out to him because he deleted the tweet. So initially, the Pistons were going to sign him for a 1-year deal.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Deal fell through. The agent, they said, hey, Magic still hold our rights. We can't sign a 1-year deal with you. So what the Pistons did, as you know, they traded 2 guys on the Motor City Cruise who, one in Kaycock, who was a huge contributor for the Cruise, but he signed over in Russia, so I don't know if he's going to be playing overseas or not. If he does go to the Magic's G League team, kid's a stud. Reggie Perry, who I've told you about before, he definitely could be in the league. Like, he could be a Christian Wood story right now. Like, if you watch Reggie Perry, man, like the guy can block shots, he can hit threes. Like, I don't know why he's still in the G League, but he probably wasn't going to sign with the Cruise anyways. It's going to be a training camp deal. That's why they had to make that trade with the Cruise, because they didn't have his rights. Now they do. My only thing with this trade was I just don't understand it from the Cruise standpoint, because they are a very guard-heavy team. It's going to be a battle. I will say that. A guy that we saw in the Summer League, Kiefer Sykes, he was busting Zavier Simpson's ass, like, respectfully. Like, Kiefer Sykes was, like, I think, second in assist in the G League. Like, okay, great point guard. There's another point guard with the Cruise. I can't remember his name right now, but a good backup. He's gonna really have to fight for his position when he's with the Cruise. I don't think he's going to make the team. I just think we have way too many guards.
Yeah.
But this isn't the only Exhibit 10 deal the Pistons signed. They signed Tosin, whatever his name is, a couple months ago. So they have a couple training camp deals. Happy for him, local kid, but I don't know, man. Like, from the Cruise standpoint, it doesn't make sense, but for the Pistons standpoint, it does make sense. You need some training camp bodies. I think you can have up to 18 or 19 players before the season starts. So we're probably going to see more of these Exhibit 10 deals with the Pistons. But I did want to kind of break down, like, the inside information that I did have. So I had no idea that, the Magic still had his rights. It didn't really make sense to me, because it's like, if the Magic have your rights, how the hell are you on our summer league team?
Yeah, that's weird.
That makes no sense to me, but I don't know, man. It was just like a whole mess, but happy for him, man. Him and Livers can be reconnected for a couple of weeks.
I do believe he'll make an NBA roster one day. It's just the shooting. I think he could be a third string point guard on a team. Maybe, I mean, I don't think he's going to be an all-star by any means, but he has produced when given the opportunity. It is only 4 games in the NBA, but you know, I mean, if you were to, it's not bad. Like, he's a player, he hustles, he's a solid point guard. It's just the shooting is the biggest knock on him.
Yeah.
It's size. I mean, he's only like 5'9". He's a tiny little guy. So do the Pistons, I've been meaning to ask you, are they getting a third 2-way contract when the season starts, or does that start next season?
I want to say that goes into effect next season, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because I think our 2-way guys are Jared Roden and Malcolm Calzone.
Yeah.
Or Cazelon. I don't know why I called him Calzone. I sound like an idiot. I think it's Cazelon. So, again, it's the G League team for the Cruise this year is going to be pretty damn deep.
Yeah.
They may be like a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference in the G League, but I don't know, man. It's that trade just, it made no sense. It kind of felt like a PR move to me personally.
They love their Michigan. Both teams, the Magic and the Pistons, love Michigan guys. It's so weird. I think eventually we'll see Ignas Brazdeikis in a Pistons uniform, possibly even Mo Wagner one day. You never know.
Yeah.
Maybe even it could be anybody. Maybe Derek Walton again. Maybe he makes an appearance. These guys just love Michigan players, man.
I mean, like my thing is, if you wanted a Michigan point guard, go get Trey Burke, man. He's in the G League. He played for the Stockton Kings last year. I mean, he was killing guys. But that's a training camp body. I'm not really gonna, get into it. Happy for him that he did get a training camp deal. It's a lot more than he would make in the G League, but happy
good for him, man. It's awesome. All right, let's talk about this next topic, and it's a good one. I think it's fair to talk about this, and it's Marcus Sasser and a lot of guard depth. We've been mentioning this throughout the podcast. The team is deep. We got a lot of guys that are going to get minutes this year at the 1 and the 2 spot. Marcus Sasser, he's a combo guard. He could play the 1 or the 2. He had that 40-point game in the summer league. He looked great. But do you see him playing for the Motor City Cruise this season?
Based off James Edwards' third depth chart, it would look like that way, wouldn't it?
Oh, 100%. I think we'll see him on the bench for the Pistons a lot this season, but the bulk of his minutes will be with the Motor City Cruise. Because like we just said, the Pistons are way too deep at the 1 and 2 by their standards the last few seasons, that it's going to, unless he shows out in training camp and in preseason, I don't expect him to get a lot of minutes right away for the Detroit Pistons. I think this is a guy that's just going to absolutely kill it in the G League, probably have a Saban Lee type season where we're like, what the fuck? Why do we not have this guy on our roster? This is crazy. And it's just that we're deep, man. The Pistons are just way too deep at the 1s and the 2s. But, I mean, I'm happy for him. I don't think he'll be in the G League for a long time. And last time I predicted a player to be in the G League, he made me eat my fucking words within, like, the first –
Jalen Duren.
Yeah. So, it doesn't – I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Marcus Sasser just showed out. But, yeah, I do expect him to get the bulk of his minutes in the G League this season.
So I've kind of been – I just don't know what position the Pistons see him as. Like, he was playing point guard in the summer league a little bit because he's like 6'1", maybe 6 foot. I'm not 100% sure like what he is, like height-wise. And I was thinking – like short 2 guards that the Pistons have had. And the one that came to my mind instantly was Avery Bradley. I think he was like 6'2", and because point guard depth, like you had mentioned, it's deep. You got Cade, you got Monte Morris, and I would assume Killian would be above him in the rotation. Even though he's not the scorer that Sasser currently is, I think he would be higher on the pecking order just because Monty probably likes his defense and his passing. Now, if you're talking about 2 guards, you got Jaden Ivey, Alec Burks, You could even throw Joe Harris in there if you want, if you see him as a two guard. I don't know. Some people view him as a small forward and a power forward. I think minutes for him are going to be hard, and if he is on the Detroit Pistons roster, it is going to be in garbage time until Monty Williams can, get his until Monty's like, okay, I can trust you. I'm going to throw you out for 10 minutes a game. I don't think spending time in the G League would be the worst thing for him to start off. Maybe you just throw him down there for an assignment, see how he does, get him some reps, because you're not really going to get better just watching your teammates play. You're going to need some reps. So I could see him maybe playing a few games here and there, but until the Pistons make some trades, maybe you trade Alec Burke at the deadline because Sasser's just killing it in practice. I don't really think he's going to get that much playing time, but that's just my opinion as we're recording this in, July, but that could change, man. Like, he could just like go berserk like he did against the Pacers in training camp and just drop 40 on everybody. And we could be 100% wrong, but I think as of right now, it's kind of hard to say, okay, yeah, he's going to get playing time over Burks. He's going to get playing time over Joe Harris. I just don't see it as of right now. And the point guard depth, like, he's probably not going to play over Monte Morris or Killian.
No, and I mean, I see the four guards getting the bulk of the minutes for the Pistons. Cade, Ivy, that's a given. And then Monte Morris and Burks. Those are the four I really see. And then I guess you could sprinkle the minutes to Killian Hayes. Like, if there's, Killian probably will get, I don't know how many minutes he'll get. I'm thinking maybe like 9 a game, and he probably doesn't play every game in there, probably just depending on the team and if there's foul trouble or whatever. But I do see Marcus Sasser. I mean, let me ask you before I answer this. Do you see him cracking the rotation at any point this season? And I know we're talking, I mean, it is July, so our thoughts could change on this. But based on how he played in Summer League and that explosive first step, that ability to go out and get you a bucket at any moment, he's a pretty good defender too. He has a 6'7" wingspan. But do you see him cracking the rotation at all for the Pistons this season?
I think it depends on the matchups and the teams you're playing.
Okay.
Because if you're playing a team like Milwaukee, no.
Yeah.
Just because they're so like Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis, like, your shot's probably getting blocked unless you're just instant offense from, the perimeter. But I think he could crack the rotation. I think it may be garbage minutes here and there, just until he can really, gain the trust of Monty Williams. Because, some coaches do like to ride their veterans to kind of push the younger guys. I know we saw that with Luke Kennard his rookie year, because we traded for Avery Bradley, and Avery Bradley was ass, respectfully. And then Luke Kennard, he couldn't miss. So I think it could be that type of situation where maybe Alec Burks is really struggling, and you want an explosive two guard that is better defensively. When he gets hot, he's hot. Like you said, that first step is explosive. He's kind of got like that Terry Rozier vibe to him, where he's just crossing people up, that dribbles really fast. I wouldn't expect him to get consistent minutes right away. I think it may take him a few months to crack that rotation consistently.
See, I see him at some point cracking the rotation, not early on. I've already said I don't see him cracking the rotation early on. I think he's going to start the season in the G League. But it would not surprise me if Burks ended up taking a back seat to Sasser, because I feel like Sasser is a player. I feel like that first step, that step back he has, that jumper, it looks good. And again, like, he's a dog defensively. You can see some kind of creative lineups with him in the mix, with that shooting, if the stroke is real. I could see him eventually taking minutes from Burks. I mean, I would like to think Burks has probably moved on the deadline. It depends on how some of these young guys play, but it wouldn't surprise me if Burks is on the Pistons for the entire year, but then ends up taking more of a back seat to a Sasser or an Asor Thompson or whoever else they decide to bring in. But yeah, I definitely see Marcus Sasser cracking the rotation at some point during this year. most likely after All-Star break. It really depends on how the Pistons are doing as well. But I just feel like this guy's going to show that he belongs in the NBA, and they're going to find a way to get him on the floor at some point. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's after All-Star break.
Yeah, like I don't really think the G League would be a demotion. I don't think he's gonna I don't think he'll get the Saban Lee treatment where he's killing it in the G League, averaging like 30, 40 points in the G League, and then he can't even get garbage minutes unless there's an injury. They traded up for him for a reason. Troy Weaver said he's kind of like that glue guy. He's one of those guys that you need on your roster. So I do expect him to get playing time. I think it'll be garbage time, whether it's a blowout or whether maybe there is an injury. I don't know. It's just I know we're trying to win, and I look at the vets that play that shooting guard position. For me, I think they would ride with an Alec Burks or a Joe Harris at that 2-guard spot.
Okay, that's fair. All right, let's talk about some creative lineups, though, now that we're talking. Because now I'm getting, my juices are flowing for this next topic. We're going to talk about fun lineups. They're not starting lineups, but fun lineups that we think the Pistons, we would like to see on the floor this year for the Detroit Pistons. Because I was reading something, and they were talking about Monty Williams having to get to be creative this year with the lineups that they have. So I'm going to start this off. This is the first lineup I thought of. Maybe it's not as creative for some people, but I just like the versatility of this lineup. And that would be Cade and Jaden Ivey in the backcourt with Asor Thompson and Isaiah Livers at the 3 and the 4. Then with Jalen Duren. So you completely clear it out. I mean, you're not getting the most 3-point shooting with Asor, but you are getting a great athlete and a guy. I just think there's so much versatility with that lineup, and you don't have a guy shorter than 6'4". You know, I mean, you can switch all the way through if you want to. You got a lot of athleticism. You got some decent 3-point shooting. You got a great athlete playing the 5 spot. That could be a lot of fun for me. But what was a lineup you thought of?
I thought of a 2-big lineup with Jalen Duren and James Wiseman.
Okay. I like that.
That would be my fun lineup. Obviously, Cade and Ivey in the backcourt, and I want Bojan at the 3. I think the chemistry that those two are building. I was watching Through the Wire podcast, Kenny Beckman's podcast, and one of their co-hosts made a really interesting comparison to those two. He compared Jalen Duren to Marcus Gasol, just the way he was passing the ball in Summer League, and comparing James Wiseman to Azebo, Zach Randolph. Now, I'm not saying that those two are going to turn into Marcus Gasol or Zach Randolph, but I think they were starting to build chemistry in the G League. Like, you started to see Jalen Duren. He was hitting that mid-range shot. He made a 3-pointer, which I think a 3-pointer is going to take a couple of years to develop, but I like the progress there. To me, I would love to see a Wiseman and a Jalen Duren lineup. Not every day. Maybe if you're going up against Boston, because they got Porzingis now, so you're going to need a little bit of size, or maybe you're going up against Cleveland. But I would love to see a Wiseman and Duren in the front court.
I would like to see that too. Or, I mean, not even just any 2 bigs. I mean, I would love to see Isaiah Stewart mixed in with Duren Wiseman, but I'm with you. I really do want to see James Wiseman and Duren share the floor. And I think we will see that. I think that's really realistic for the Pistons. I mean, there's a reason they brought James Wiseman in. So I definitely want to see those two be on the floor together. I mean, I've said this almost the exact same way every single podcast. When James Wiseman pushed it up the floor, then dropped it off to Duren, who dunked it from 9 feet out, I just instantly tweeted, God, I hope Troy Weaver is right. Oh my gosh, that would be so much fun. But I do have a second lineup for you. It's a little bit smaller, but it's Monty Morris, Marcus Sasser in the backcourt, Jaden Ivey and Asor Thompson at the 3 and the 4, with James Wiseman in the middle. So you go real short, 1 through 4, and then you got Wiseman at the 5. That to me it's a video game lineup. You got shooting. It's just ridiculous. I thought of that before we came on. Wanted to share it. that would be, I just feel like you'd press the entire time with that team. And you don't even do that in the NBA. So that'd be a fun lineup for me. Be ridiculous, but it'd be fun.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go wild, just put a sore at the 5.
No. If we're gonna go wild and we're gonna go short at the 5, dude, go Monty at the 1, Monte at the 1, Ivy, K to Sword, then Isaiah Livers at the 5. That would be a pretty crazy lineup.
You want him to get hurt again?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on who he's going up against, but that
bubble wrap that man if he's playing center.
Did we actually get like a little kind of teasing that Asor Thompson would play the 5? Did someone tweet that out, or did someone like talk about that on a podcast? I don't know why I'm thinking of that right now.
Not to my knowledge, but I think in certain situations he could play a small ball 5 because he's a good rebounder.
Yeah, he is.
But that's like a Golden State lineup if you had like Steph and Clay and Draymond out there. But I don't know. I don't think we're gonna like see like crazy lineups like that. But lineups like this are pretty fun to talk about.
I think you could. I mean, I think Monty Williams will definitely have to be a little creative with his teams, and I think we're going to see some guys play out of position. Like I've talked about before, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Joe Harris play the 4 for a short amount of minutes. You know, he played a little bit of the 4 last year for Brooklyn. Bojan's played the 4 for the Pistons and other teams in the past. Like I just think there's some creative lineups out there that the Pistons can make, and it's going to be a fun season just for that aspect. But we can move on because we got more to talk about.
All right.
So Bleacher Report added again, no crazy trades, but they talked about their biggest wins and losses this year. And the Pistons, the biggest one was hiring Monty Williams. That was a big win. And then the loss, I'm kind of surprised, we'll touch on this in a second, was that they didn't bring in enough wings, or they still lack wing depth. But let's talk about the biggest win. I'm glad that they acknowledged Monty and they weren't calling it a move for desperation. The only knock on that part would be that they said the Pistons could lose, or the Pistons will be spending up to $100 million. Again, it's not the Pistons exactly spending money on the coach's salary. That does come from the owner himself. It doesn't affect the salary cap. I don't know if that's what they were alluding to, but what were your thoughts on the biggest win?
Yeah, I mean, a Bleacher Report thinks that, you know, we're going to use a salary cap on Monty Williams. I guess they're as dumb as Gilbert Arenas. But, I mean, if you see Little Caesar's pizzas going up, you know why.
Oh, my gosh. I hope not.
I guess season tickets have already, like, skyrocketed. They've went up like $200 already.
Don't even get me started about that. I've had conversations about this and it annoys the hell out of me.
I think it's a fair for the biggest win. I mean, you arguably get a top 10 NBA coach in Monty Williams. I think that is a win, whether you guys want to think it is or not. Yeah, you had to spend a whole lot of money to get the guy, but you're getting a top tier coach in the NBA. Now, for the loss, I actually do agree with Bleacher Report. I did want the Pistons to sign more wing depth. You got Joe Harris. Cool. I would have loved to try to make a move at a Torrey Craig or, you know, someone like that. But we haven't yet. Like, I think we have like $300,000 in cap space. Maybe there's a trade coming. Maybe there's not. I don't know. But I was kind of disappointed from the free agency standpoint, just because we got reports all year that we're going after Cam Johnson, like Kyle Kuzma could be in play. Like I thought we were going to be one of those teams that used their cap space to be part of free agency, but we didn't. We're kind of looking into next year to use our cap space. Now, whether or not we participate in free agency, we're going to have to wait and see. But I think with Bleacher Report, I would agree. It is a big loss not signing more wings for this team. I think you're really, if you're looking from an outsider looking at the Pistons are really hoping that their core players that they have develop and they hit. And if they don't, then you're kind of like, shit.
So, or when they say wing, are they just talking about the 3 spot? Because
Yeah, like a small forward. Like, yeah, you got a Sore Thompson, but like it would have been great to, get another one like a Kelly Oubre or something like that to kind of complete the roster.
So
Um,
one thing that I had a problem with their biggest loss was they said, and I'm reading this, getting one more 6'9" defender who can space the floor. There's nobody on this team that even fits that criteria right now for the Pistons. But also, I looked this up on NBA.com, and according to NBA.com, there's only 24 players in the NBA that are actually 6'9". So it's not like not even every team can actually put a guy that's 6'9" on their roster to space the floor. They're kind of rare, even by today's NBA standards. So I'm nitpicking at this just a little bit. I don't, I mean, I do agree with them. I do think it's the biggest loss because I'm with you. I would have liked to see them use the salary cap a little differently. I remember that we did a couple of podcasts where we said if Cam Johnson isn't an option, who would you want them to go for to play the 3 or the 4, to help spread the floor? And we were throwing out guys like Kelly Oubre. You said Torrey Craig. I threw out Harrison Barnes. I wouldn't have mind them taking a shot at a Darius Baisley. He's Troy Weaver knows about him. He was in OKC when Baisley was there as well. So there were a few guys I would have liked them to go after. I really don't think it's a huge, I don't like, if it is the biggest loss, I'm kind of like, okay, it's not that big of an issue because you do have Cade coming back, Bojan's healthy. You did bring in Joe Harris, Asor Thompson, Isaiah Livers. I'm okay with those guys playing on the perimeter for the Detroit Pistons. The other thing I do have a question for you though, but I do want to bring this up. The last part of this little spot that they talked about, the biggest loss was they said a Marvin Bagley the third and Reggie Bullock swap with San Antonio would help better the roster. They're really pushing that trade pretty hard. We talked about it last week, and it just cracks me up that they brought that up again.
I don't know how Reggie Bullock makes this team better.
Yeah, he's not 6'9". I don't get it.
I think he's 6'8", but like, yeah, he's a good 3-point shooter when he's on, but when he's not on, he doesn't really provide anything else. He doesn't have a tight handle. Like, he's just a catch and shoot small forward or shooting guard, whatever you want to categorize him. And I don't know why Bleacher Report's dead set on trading Bagley to. I think Bullock plays in San Antonio now. I'm not 100% sure, but
yeah, they said San Antonio. Did I say Dallas?
No, yeah, I could have sworn he was part of a trade for
no, he is in San Antonio. He is in San Antonio.
Okay, yeah, like I'd rather keep Bagley, but for the most part, I do agree with them. I thought Monty Williams was a big time win, and I thought the loss, not getting a wing, 100% agree. Like, I love Asor Thompson. I think he's going to be a great player, but I would have loved a little bit more wing depth because I don't really know if Isaiah Livers can give me 50 games. I don't really know if there's a guy on the training camp that could crack this team. Like, I don't know if a Jared Rhoden could crack this roster right now because he had an okay summer league, but not on the defensive end of the floor. All he did was score. He didn't really play lockdown defense. So that was probably my only takeaway from this article. Like, I did agree with them. He didn't really get another small forward to complete this roster yet.
Okay, so I know that they brought up Monty Williams for the biggest win, but looking through the article, there's some teams where they praise them for their draft, like Dallas right here, moving back from number 10 to number 12 to get and moving on from Davis Bertans' contract. But they bring that up. But don't you think getting Asor Thompson at 5 and then trading up to get Marcus Sasser at 25, couldn't that be considered a big win for the Detroit Pistons?
We're going to have to wait and see what happens with Asor. I think he's going to be one of the most complete rookies this year because he doesn't play like a rookie. To me, he's just kind of a guy that doesn't play his age. He's just very calm and under control. I think he'll be a good player. I don't know if I would consider that a win, though, because he was there at 5. And I think most people had him all year as a top 5 pick. We were talking about it like in October or November. Like, he was in my top 5 all year, him and his brother. But I think Sasser, again, I'm not 100% sure if other teams would have taken him in the 20s. He might have been an early second-round pick. Now, I could be 100% wrong with that, but I haven't really seen a whole lot of Sasser buzz among the draft community. They thought he was a good player, and he'll be a good player here in Detroit, but I think a bigger win was Monty Williams because you had to get that coach right because you're still in that rebuilding phase. And to me, I think getting Monty is a bigger deal than drafting a Sword Thompson and Marcus Sasser.
Okay. I mean, I do think bringing in a good coach, that's important. And I do consider it still the biggest win. But I don't know, still coming away with two. I mean, they both showed out in Summer League, and I'm basing it all off of that. Based on how they played in Summer League, I'm like, you kind of have to factor that in a little bit. Like, I feel like the Pistons had a pretty good offseason for the most part. Yeah, there are some complaints, but getting those two players who, again, based on Summer League, look like they're going to be a part of your future going forward, I think that would be considered a win as well. Not arguing with Bleacher Report. I think the win, they got it right. I feel like the loss, though, I don't know. It felt like it kind of felt like they just breezed through the loss, though. I felt like, maybe a bigger loss was not moving on from Marvin Bagley or, not moving on from James Wiseman or anything like that. I'm not saying the Pistons would have, but I think you could have considered that a loss as well, versus just not.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know this is off topic, but I mean, you could have kind of jumped Houston to get Cam Whitmore. Like, once you saw him fall out of the lottery, like, I don't know if he's a Troy Weaver guy, but he had a phenomenal Summer League, and he was a Summer League MVP. He looked like a guy, I didn't see no back injury. He was dunking, he was stealing. I think he had like 8 steals in one Summer League game. He looked great out there. I know that's a player that I see a lot of Pistons fans right now. They're still pissed off about that.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like they wanted Whitmore at 5.
I thought he had more of an issue with his knees, though. I thought I had read somewhere that his knee issue might be like Brandon Roy's knee issue, where there is no, like, they're just constantly getting worse, and there's really nothing you can do about it. But I don't know. But I mean, Cam Whitmore, he absolutely showed out in Summer League. He looks like a real ball player for the Houston Rockets. Let's talk about the young prospects, though. This is another Bleacher Report article, and it's really honestly not that hard to guess who they put in for the young prospects. It was Cade Cunningham, Asor Thompson, and Jaden Ivey. Right off the rip, though, do you agree with those three? That those three are the youngest prospects? The
most promising out of the Detroit Pistons young core? I'm surprised they left Jalen Duren out of this. I've seen a lot of like local media kind of leave him out. Like they're not really talking about him. They're like, oh yeah, Pistons young core, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asor Thompson. Like, hold on a minute. I think you could argue Jalen Duren is just as important as Asor Thompson. I think there's a world where this guy could be a top 10 center in a few years. I don't agree with this list. No. I love Asor Thompson. I just haven't seen him play against NBA talent yet. Okay. Played against some G League talent and some, Euro guys in the Summer League. But to me personally, I'm going to put Duren as my third most promising prospect. And I think Asor Thompson has the chance to maybe bump out one of those guys. But for me right now, I would put Duren in that third most promising prospect.
Tell me if this makes sense. I think the only reason not that I'm disagreeing with you, because I was going to ask you who you would replace Duren with, and I'm glad you answered it before I even got to ask. But just tell me if I'm right or tell me if I'm wrong. I think it's a little harder for big men to really be like, I can see why people leave them off the list, because I feel like it's a harder ladder to climb for them to be considered. You know what I mean? Like, in order for him to be really good, you'd have to compare him with the Joel Embiids, the Joics, the Giannis Antetokounmpos, those type of bigs. And that's a hard ladder to climb for him. So I'm not surprised they left him off. But I have another take that might be interesting. I don't know if I would. I know Cade is young and he's obviously one of the most promising prospects, but I already feel like even though he's only played I think like 82 games in his career in 2 years, I feel like he showed enough where I would be okay with them leaving him off the list because I kind of think he's past the prospect stage, if that makes sense.
At
So
19?
no, I'm talking about Cade Cunningham right now.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Duren. I was like, dude, he's not even 20 yet.
I'm talking about Cade Cunningham that I wouldn't have been mad if they left him off the promising prospects because I feel like even though it's only been again like I think 82 games, I'm not even sure the exact number for Cade, that he's only played that many games. I feel like he's already showed enough where I really don't consider him a prospect. I consider him just a young ball player. Like he showed me enough where I'm like, yeah, I don't care if you leave him off the list. That's fine with me because he's already showed me enough. He already looks like an all-star, in my opinion, than just a promising player, if that makes sense.
I mean, you could argue he only played a couple. They didn't play a full rookie season because he had an ankle injury coming out of training camp, and he only played 12 games. So, like when I look at a promising prospect, and I'm really hyper focusing on prospect, if you're under 25, to me you're considered a prospect.
Okay.
So, or even 20, you could even say 24 or 23. And all these guys are. I like Asor Thompson's older than Jalen Duren. Think about that for a second.
It's pretty great.
It's pretty funny. For me, I'm higher on Jalen Duren because I feel like out of all of these guys, he has the potential to be a elite lockdown defender. He has the potential to be, like Monty said, not a top 10 center, but a top 10 player in the league. That's how he feels about him. And I could kind of see the vision of what Monty Williams sees because we've maybe seen 5% of what the kid's capable of last year. We saw that mid-range shot. He's got a nice handle. He can. We saw him protect the rim coming off the bench last year. It seems like he was swatting everything. I think there's so much there with him as Pistons fans we haven't even seen yet.
But don't you think it's still like it would be tougher for Duren to reach those heights than any of these other three?
I don't think so. If you have the right coach and development staff to unlock it, and you have two elite guards, you could even throw Asor in there because he's a great playmaker. Like all three of those guys, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, and Asor Thompson, are going to be able to feed him and get him passes where he can dunk it, or maybe he's doing a backdoor cut. Like all these guys are great passers and they have excellent vision. With Duren, I think you have a building block and a franchise center. Like I think he could be a guy that you're going to keep for 10 years because there's just so much to like about him defensively. His passing's underrated. He's got that mid-range jump shot. Like I could go on for an hour of why I love Jalen Duren. And I know maybe you're not as high on him because you haven't seen as much yet in his rookie season. But I'm just telling you, man, from what I've seen, just throughout going back and watching some old high school games, watching some AAU stuff, like there's so much there we haven't even seen yet.
No, I mean I love Duren. You know I wanted him on draft night. My wish came true on draft night. No, I'm not arguing with you because I see why you would want to put Duren on there. There's a lot to love. I was just saying it's been 76 games for Cade. I'm looking at it right now. I feel like in those 76 games, I could remove him off the promising prospects because I'm like, dude, he's already good enough. Like, I don't want to just sit there and like talk about his potential because I think he's going to be a 24/7 guy this upcoming year. And he'll probably even surpass that at some point in his career. My list would actually be Jaden Ivey, Asor Thompson, and Jalen Duren, just because I feel like even though all four of them are closer in age, I just feel like there's more mystery to their games than there is to Cade. So I would actually remove Cade just because like I just don't consider him a promising prospect. I just consider him a promising player. And I would actually have Jaden Ivey, Asor Thompson, and Jalen Duren as my three promising prospects. Just because again, just to reiterate, I feel like they haven't shown there's more to their games. And with Cade, I've already seen it. I already see the franchise player that everybody else sees. So that's why I would remove Cade.
Yeah, like just when I look at prospects, I think you could say 23 to 24 is kind of like the cutoff,
Okay.
and all of these guys are in that age group now. I think this is a really fun topic, and like we could probably just keep going, but like I think Duren and Cade to me, I think could be multi-time All-Stars. I think to me, I think they could be guys that are All-Star weekend every year. That's how highly I think of them. I think Cade, yeah, 24/7 guy. I think he could take a leap like SGA. I really do. I think he could just be a guy that just comes out with a vengeance. He sees all those stupid draft dummy tweets that we were talking about earlier. He sees all the disrespect. He sees the fat Cade Cunningham stuff on Twitter by his own fan base, mind you. He's gonna come out and just blow the roof off any kind of notion that he's a bust, he's injury prone. Like I could see him coming out just averaging 26 a game. Like
I mean,
that's how highly I think of him.
I'm there with you. I think he's gonna have a great season. The only reason I always say 24 is because I feel like Jaden Ivey will take another step. I feel like Duren will take another step. Bojan is still there. He won't have to score them any points, but I do agree with you. I think he could take a huge leap coming back, and I think he will. I just think he'll average out to around 24, 7, and 7. And I think that's fair. But we have one more topic before we move on to Q&A, and that is
you love these, by the way. Like,
I do.
Swear.
I read your comment on the prep sheet and I was like, this motherfucker. But this was inspired by a Pistons lead on Twitter. I told him I'd give them I told them I would give them a shout out. I don't know who it is, but shout out to Pistons leads for coming up with this. But you're an expansion team. We're going to set the setting right. You have one final pick. It comes down to Killian Hayes or Kyle Lowry. Who would you take in an expansion draft for your team?
I am not taking a 49-year-old Kyle Lowry. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm going to take Killian Hayes in this spot, and I might get a little bit of hate for it in the comment section, but he's 22 years old. I think he just had a birthday. Maybe he's 23 now. I don't know. He had his best year this season in terms of just stats across the board. 10 points, 6 assists, led the team in assists and steals this year. I'm not saying he's a finished product by any means. I still think there's something there that maybe the Pistons can untap some more potential, but he had a stretch for about 3 weeks where he looked like the number 7 overall pick. And I think it's going to take him maybe another year or two where he could be a 13-7 guy all day. And he's going to give you that defense, and he's going to kind of be that floor general out there. I'm not like, if I'm starting a franchise right now, I'm not choosing a 49-year-old out of shape Kyle Lowry. I'm just not. And I know he's not 49 years old, but that's just my point. It kind of seems like, hey, let's make this topic to talk shit about Killian Hayes for a minute.
Hey, maybe it was. Okay, maybe it was. No, I'm taking Kyle Lowry. I said it on Twitter. I'm going to be true to myself. I'm taking Kyle Lowry in the expansion draft. You give me that sweet 11, 5, and 4 with 1 steal per game, shooting 40, 35, and 86% from the line. Give me those numbers, and he's going to lead my team out of mediocrity, my expansion team, and we're probably getting around like 39 wins with Kyle Lowry and versus 17 with Killian Hayes. So I'm going to take Kyle Lowry in an expansion draft over Killian Hayes. I just look, it's not me hating on Killian Hayes. I've just seen enough. I need a starting point guard, and I get that with Kyle Lowry. With Killian,
for how many years though? Like a year?
That's fine. And then his contract comes off the books. I got like 40 million coming off the books with Kyle Lowry or whatever his contract is. It's ridiculous. But I'm taking Kyle Lowry over Killian Hayes. Tomorrow, every week.
Dude, come on. Like, we have been very crucial on Killian Hayes. But if if I have to choose between those are my choices for the next 5 years, I'm going to roll the dice and take him. Like, I'm not going to take Kyle Lowry. He is not the same Kyle Lowry he was in Toronto.
No,
like,
of course not.
Miami Kyle Lowry, he's ass. I had him in fantasy this year. He was hurt half the time. Like probably eating too many cheeseburgers or something. Like I don't know. I'm not taking Kyle Lowry to start my franchise. It's just disrespectful to Killian Hayes at this point, man. It's just like.
But either way, with Kyle Lowry or Killian Hayes, you're getting a top pick. You know what I'm saying? You're replacing them at some point. You're replacing either of them at some point throughout your expansion team. Whether it's in the first or second year, you're replacing either of these guys pretty soon.
Man, like I saw this topic, I was like, man, he just wants to talk shit about Killian Hayes. I'll let him get his shit off, I guess.
Dude, I've been fair to Killian Hayes. I've said already before, I want to see him in a different role. Just factoring, just focus on the defense and just make cuts to the basket and let Cade feed you. Seen plenty of videos of it. It could work. But in the expansion draft, just to reiterate, I'm taking Kyle Lowry over Killian Hayes. And if you want, we can move on to Q&A right now.
We can, man. That's just like, I don't know. Some people said they would take Kyle Lowry, which I get. I knew that I would get a little bit of hate in the comments for it. But like, you have to think like long term. Like, you're just probably going to draft another point guard because he's going to be out of the league in a couple of years. I mean, like Udonis Haslem. No, it's just completely off topic, but that old head finally retired today.
Yep.
So it's not going to be collecting the check anymore. But we'll do some Q&A questions. This isn't so much a question, but we were talking about Jalen Duren a little while ago. And this is a hot take from Kirby. And I absolutely love this hot take from him. He said, hot take, Jalen Duren will be our best player in 3 years.
So then what does he have to do to be the best player in 3 years? Like, what do you need to see from him as the best player? Like, is he going to create his own shot at the 5? Can we just throw the ball to him and he can go get a bucket? Like, to me, that's what the best player needs to be able to do. You need to be able to throw him the ball, everybody clears out, and he can go get you a bucket. He needs to do that offensively, and then he needs to be an all defensive team member to be the best player in 3 years.
I mean, he could have a career similar to, like, I think his passing is real.
Yeah.
And I think he could be in a similar situation. I'm not going to even mention Jokic or Embiid, but I think Marc Gasol in his Memphis days, where Marc Gasol was a good defender. He was a lockdown defender. He won a couple Defensive Player of the Years. And he's a big contributor for Toronto's championship. I think he could have that type of impact where he's doing the dribble handoffs. They're looking to get him the ball. He's got that mid-range game. He can, impact the game defensively, and he can set up his teammates. I think, I don't know if I would go on to say he's going to be the best player in 3 years, but I would say he's like a 1A to 1B to Cade Cunningham. Like, I think those two, just in the pick and roll, it's going to be absolutely filthy. Like, those two together, like, they haven't even played together. Like, that's what you have to think. Like, that's absolutely insane. Like, they barely played together.
No, it's going to be a fun two-man game between them. I mean, some Pistons fans are going to hate me for saying this, but I could easily see Jalen Duren kind of being like a Clint Capella, where he's a role guy, just going out there to get rebounds and get blocks. You could very easily see that, and I think he would succeed in that role, and you could be an all-star in that role. But when I think of like best player at the 5 spot, you got to be like a Bam, a Marc Gasol, Joel Embiid, a Yoick. Like, you got to be one of those type of players to be the best when you're playing the 5 spot in the NBA. You got to have that type of skill and that type of talent, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, some people believe he needs to average like 25 and 14 to be considered the best. And you got guys like Ryan thinks 16, 12, and 2 blocks a game could have him being the best player on the team. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't have the bag like Joel Embiid, doesn't have that post work, but I feel like he has the work ethic where he could develop that.
Yeah.
He could develop into a low post monster. He just seems like a kid that's willing to put in the work and willing to get better. And I think that's why I've been so high on him for me.
Oh, I'm a huge fan. Me and Paul George, we agreed next to Dwight Howard.
This is a question from EKC Edits. I'll let you answer this one. What record do you think the Pistons will be? Like how many wins, how many losses?
I think I said anywhere from like 28 to 33 for the Pistons. I'm gonna go ahead and say 28, but I just feel like it'd be so easy to say. It'd just be such a cop out. Um, I could see them finishing with 32 wins this year. I mean, Monty Williams he took the Phoenix Suns from a 19 win team to a 34 win team, right? Like they were 19 wins before he got there, then 34 wins his first year. I mean, he did have Devin Booker, did have DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges. I don't know if Chris Paul was on that team yet, but it was a pretty good young core. You had some proven players on that team. So yeah, I could see a similar thing happening for the Detroit Pistons with Monty Williams in his first year. Maybe not exactly doubling the wins, but getting, what is that, 15 more wins? Getting 15 more wins than the previous year. I could see that happening for the Detroit Pistons, especially if they all stay healthy. It really depends on Cade, though. It really does.
So I have 35 wins for this team. I think that's where I'm just going to put my stake. I got 35 and 47 losses.
Okay.
I think that's something that I think is obtainable if we're healthy. Now, if we're not healthy, then I think that 27.5 that Vegas has the Pistons winning, I think that's more obtainable. But I think everyone coming in healthy, you've kind of addressed your backup point guard, more of a veteran presence who can, hit 3-point shots and play defense and is more of a positive as a backup point guard than Corey Joseph, then yeah, it's an absolute win. I think 35 wins to me is not as crazy as I'm trying to tell fans that it is. Like I think 35 wins to me is obtainable.
Okay, so 2018, 2019, the Phoenix Suns under Igor Kokoskov, I don't know. They were 19 and 63. They were 28th in offensive rating, and they were 29th in defensive rating. Monty Williams' first season was 2019, 2020. He finished 34 and 39, 10th in the NBA Western Conference. So that's a pretty big leap from previous year to the next season under a first-year coach. That's a pretty big leap. I don't know what every other first-year coach has done. I'd have to go back and look at that, but they were expected to be a 37-win team, and he was right under it with that in his first year. And then his second year, they were 51 and 21. The Phoenix Suns were under Monty Williams. So that's what we can expect. So I'll say,
yeah, I mean, some people think I'm crazy. They think an 18-win jump is absolutely ridiculous. I'll just say I'm trying to be positive.
Yeah,
because I could dead ass see this team winning 25 games. like assuming like health isn't the best, and you got like ticky tacky injuries where like stepped on an ankle in practice or whatever. But I just think you're getting a guy that you didn't have on your roster that can get you an extra 20 points a game.
Yep.
And that can play great defense and can facilitate. Like, I think some people are underestimating Cade Cunningham. And that's all I'll say is I think 30 wins is obtainable.
I think, too, with Cade Cunningham, you finally get a closer. You finally get a guy that can actually close out a game for you. Go in. You need someone in the final 2 minutes to put something together. That is Cade Cunningham. And, yeah, we didn't have – the Pistons did not have that last year. So I'm sticking with 32. I think that's obtainable. That's a 15-win jump. You're saying 35. That's a 19-win jump. I think both are very possible for next year under Monty Williams.
Yeah, I do too. I know it's only July. We're talking about this. Someone made a joke. It was I think it was Impaler. I want to see if I can put it on the screen because this is what we did last year. This was his comment. July. Yeah, 28 wins is a cop out. December. Holy crap! How do we only have 5 wins? Don't speak that into existence. Please don't. Please don't. I for my mental health, I don't know if I can handle that.
what the Pistons will have more than 5 wins in December. We might have 7, but it'll be more than 5.
Oh God. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I just don't. This is a question from Mr. Jones. Has to do with Marvin Bagley. Do you believe Bagley is an asset if he shoots over 36% from 3 on 4 attempts per game?
Oh, hell yeah. Every team's going to be calling about him. I don't know if that is I don't want to be negative. But man, that would be, what did he shoot last year? I don't even think it was at 28%.
Well, I think 28%.
That's what it was last year. I'm looking this up.
Around there. He had a stretch where he was shooting 40% when he came back from his ankle injury. And I look at Bagley's contract now. Last year we were talking about, hey, is this an overpay for Marvin Bagley, $12 million a year, right?
Yeah.
You look at the contracts right now, it doesn't look too bad, does it?
No, that's what I was saying a few months ago. Once the cap goes up, it's going to be, I think it's less than 10% of the salary cap.
But to answer Mr. Jones's question, if Marvin Bagley shoots 36% from 3 on 4 attempts a game, that is a win for the Pistons.
Oh, yeah.
Now, do I think he can go from, I think he was 27, 28% from 36%? I don't. But if he does, that's crazy. That's I think that's above league average, 36%. So
he shot 28.8% from 3. So we'll round up to 29 on 1.6 attempts. What do you think is more likely, 36% from 3 or 4+ attempts per game from 3?
4 attempts. Because if he wants to play power forward,
yeah, he's going to have to shoot 3 balls.
You're going to have to shoot like Isaiah Stewart. You're going to have to spread the floor. I don't think he's going to shoot 36% from 3. I think he could get like 32, maybe 33%, maybe on less volume. Like his 3-point shot, it's not broken, but I just don't think that's a strength of his right now. I'm not saying he can't develop it because I'm sure he's in the gym working on his 3-point shot all the time. I just can't see him coming in to next season shooting 36% on 4 attempts a game. Like that would be absolutely nuts.
He shot 31% his rookie year, 62 games on 2 attempts. He only played 13 games his second year, and he played it at center, but he shot 18%. And then his third year, he played 43 games. He shot 34%. And then ever since he's been in Detroit, he shot 27% from 3 on 2 attempts per game. So he's never shot more than, well, his last full season in Sacramento, he was taking about 3 per game, but and he did shoot 34%. So I don't know. I mean, like 34% could be obtainable for him, but I mean, I don't know. So far, that's the anomaly in his career. That's the thing that stands out. That's the outlier. That doesn't, the rest of, I think he's, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe he does jump up to 32%. Maybe, I think it would be a win. I think he's more of an asset if he shoots above 30% from the 3-point line, even on like 2 to 3 attempts per game. That helps out the Pistons more than him just camping in the post. Even though he's very skilled in the post, just develop some consistency from the outside. That's what you want to see from him.
Yeah, I think 36%, I don't think he'll get close to that. I think if he's playing off the bench and the point guard is Monte Morris and you got Burks out there, they're probably not looking for Marvin Bagley for perimeter shots.
Yeah.
They're probably looking for Bagley to be a low post force. They're looking to him to get that 14 and 7.
That vertical spacing.
They're just looking for him to dominate the paint. They're not looking for him to stretch the floor because they're going to have 3-point shooters out there. Like Livers would probably share the floor with the Bagley, maybe at the power forward spot. Like to me, I think, could he do it? Possibly, but I don't really think that's something that the Pistons are going to ask him to do. But you had mentioned 34%. I mean, that's good, but I don't really think they're going to say, hey, Marvin, we need 4 attempts a game from you from 3.
But do you think though that they are talking to him about his outside shot? Like we're going to need more of this from you coming up, just because.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think if you want to do this two big lineup, I think all the bigs need to be able to stretch the floor. But it's not something where they're really hyper focusing. Like we want 500 threes a day from you. Like they're probably not saying that, but like
But
it's something that he's probably low key working on. So when he is wide open from three, um, he can knock it down. I mean, I saw a couple games this year where he was hitting the corner threes. He was hitting those mid range jump shots. So I think it's something that he's working on, but I just don't think it's a finished product right now with him.
oh, you could see him trailing too in the. I think he did that a few times at the top of the key, shooting from the 3-point line. I think I would rather him work on the perimeter stuff more than anything else going into the off seasons. Like this is what's going to keep you in the NBA. I know you can go get me 14 and 7. Now I just want to see you develop the other parts of your game. That's what I'd want to see more from him. But I'm just a fan.
Yeah, I think they're just going to ask him to be a backup five and just dominate in the low post personally. Just like, hey, we need you to just dominate the opposing backup centers and just, get us 15 points. Like that's all we really need from you. We don't need you to be Steph Curry out there shooting like 5 threes a game.
Ooh, I got a question for you though before we move on. Do you think he's more valuable at 14 and 7 or like 9 and 5, but he shoots closer to 33-34% from three?
I would take the 14 and 7.
Okay.
I would. Just because I know he's a good low post scorer.
Yeah.
Like I know he's got a deep bag. So for me, I would rather take the 14 and 7 of him being in the post versus him scoring 9 points a game from the perimeter. I think it's more valuable.
Even if it helps them win more games, if he's on the perimeter hitting those threes, and
well, that's a different question.
okay.
That's a completely different question. You just asked me what's more valuable, 14 and 7 in the post or 9 and 5 from the perimeter. Now you're throwing in, what if it wins more games? Well, yeah, I'm going to take the 9 and 5, Lance. Come on.
I should have threw that in there as well before I asked.
Like, come on, man. It's like two different questions.
My bad.
We do have a question, and it's funny because we were talking about this in our Pistons group chat the other day about Christian Wood. And this comes from Black Nerd Chris. He said, do you think the Pistons should go after Christian Wood to be their starting power forward? I'll let you take this one. I kind of have an opinion on Christian Wood that might not be the most popular.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very talented guy. I mean, I love his game. I think he had, 17 and 9 last year with the Dallas Mavericks at some point. I'm going to pull up his numbers here.
I don't have the stats pulled up. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, 17 and 7 for 67 games with the Dallas Mavericks last year. But look, I mean, Philadelphia, Charlotte, Milwaukee, New Orleans, Detroit, Houston, Dallas. If I can add correctly, I believe that's 7 teams he's played for in his career, and he's never made it past 2 seasons with anybody. I mean, 2 seasons with the Houston Rockets for a total of 108 games. But, I mean, man, Detroit, that's his 3rd longest stop at 62 games. Now, I know he was more of like an unknown commodity or an unknown player with the other teams, but the talent is there. It's just there's something else, whether it's attitude or, he's a bad locker room guy. There's something stopping Christian Wood from making it work long-term with some teams. And it's not his talent. He's a very good player. Would I take a player like Christian Wood on the Pistons? Oh, 100%. But if he's here to muck things up and it's going to, cause growing pains for some of the younger guys, I'll just say no. But if it's a talent like Christian Woods, yeah, 100%. But again, just to reiterate, there's something else going on with this guy where he just can't make it work with other NBA teams and it's dooming him from really maximizing on his talent. This guy should be making more than Marvin Bagley per year, and he's not.
Yeah, so my thing with this has nothing to do with talent because he's one of the, I would say, better power forwards that's available still.
Yeah.
It's professionalism and it's locker room. I remember I told you last summer, Jason Kidd said he wouldn't start him. And he went on Twitter with his cryptic tweets, saying, blah, blah, blah. I think it's an immaturity thing. And do you want that in your locker room if you're not getting playing time? Because who's to say Isaiah Stewart can't develop and get better? Who's to say James Wiseman can't develop and get better? There would be a lot of competition with him in the front court. Now, if he's your starting forward, power forward, I don't know. Maybe you take him on a league minimum. I know Troy Weaver did already trade him to Houston to acquire Isaiah Stewart, which would be really ironic, bringing him back, be a full circle moment, but it has nothing to do with talent. It's showing up late to practice. It's having an attitude in the locker room because you're not starting. It's stuff like that where he's not signed, and NBA teams have taken notice of that. When you're on that many teams over a 5-year span, all 30 teams, all 30 GMs, they got your number. They got the tape. Like, they have all the press conferences. They can go look back on how your body language is. It's when he's playing and he's starting, he's fine. But when he's not getting that playing time, he pouts. And I just don't know if Troy Weaver would want that in his locker room.
Yeah, he did sign one contract, 3 years, $41 million. So he was making a little bit more than Marvin Bagley. But I think he's looking at league minimum now, potentially, for his next contract, when this guy should be signing another contract north of $41 million. The talent's there, like we're saying. It's just what you said, professionalism.
Yeah, it's professionalism, but like I think Dwayne Casey tried to take him under his wing and tried to, make him a professional. And, he was in Houston for 2 seasons. He was in Dallas this year, which I thought the fit with Dallas was perfect because they didn't really have a center. But Dallas doesn't even want him back. I think that if there is a team, it's not going to be the Pistons. I think a sleeper team I would have for Christian Wood is Golden State. I think Golden State to me makes so much sense. He's a perfect center that can play small ball 5. He can play power forward. He can shoot threes. I don't think it's going to be Detroit. I think it makes sense for Detroit. If you're talking about a power forward that can shoot threes and block shots and play defense, 100% it makes sense. But it's not going to be the Detroit Pistons. He was here for Troy's first year, and obviously, Troy felt that he just wasn't a good locker room guy. If that was the case, they would have re-signed Christian Wood and had Jeremy Grant on the same team, and that just wasn't the case.
Man, I hope he figures it out. I hope he becomes more of a professional. Get that money, man. Go ahead and get that money.
I think he's a good player. I really do. It's just when you hear stuff like that, and I've heard it from people, because I know people that cover the Dallas Mavericks, that work for kind of like a lower end company, but they have media access. They've told me he's really moody. He's cryptic. He's hard to get a read on. Like, you never know what he's going to say. Like, some days he's in a good mood. Other days he's in a bad mood. Other days he doesn't show up to practice. Like, I don't really think you want that in your locker room either.
No, it's a bad example.
Yeah. Like, I loved him when he was here. He was a pilot machine. The way he could just catch lobs and dunk. Like, I loved it, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think him and Luka were like one of the best lob threats in the NBA last year, according to the numbers.
Yeah, like, good player. I did want to get to a question by everyone needs to smile, because he has been asking a lot of questions. I think we answered this last week. I think Ryan asked this question last week about a starting four. Do you think the starting four when the Pistons' next playoff or play-in is currently on the roster? I don't.
No, I mean, no, because I think that's the weakest position in the starting lineup for the Pistons right now. And I think this upcoming season, we're going to see Isaiah Stewart, Bojan, probably even Isaiah Livers, maybe a little bit of Joe Harris, all these guys playing the 4 spot for the Detroit Pistons. And I would rather see someone else. So I don't believe the starting four when the Pistons next make the playoff or playing is currently on the roster. You know, I mean, I think they could make a play-in game with those guys playing the 4 spot, but I still think the answer is out there, and you know, only time will tell when they get them.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a guy in free agency. Maybe there's this disgruntled power forward that wants to get traded. I know we talked about Siakam last week.
Yeah.
Don't really know if I'd be willing to do a rental, but if you want to go sign him, maybe. I think Siakam makes a lot of sense. I think he'd probably be the best power forward you could trade for right now. But it would be risky because he's on a 1-year deal and there's no guarantee he would re-sign with you. And you'd have to move some parts because cap space wise, you just don't have the money. I think they're really banking on Stewart. I really do. I personally don't think he's a guy that when you're like in the Eastern Conference, trying to, get to the NBA Finals, is he that power forward that you're starting? And I think that's what everyone needs to smile is asking. I just don't know if there's a power forward right now that the Pistons could strictly get for maybe a lower end talent like a Killian Hayes or an Isaiah Livers. I think you would have to include one of your core guys if you want to improve that power forward spot.
Yeah, and I don't want to see them give up any of the core guys just yet, too, because I want to see how far this roster can take us. But I don't think Isaiah Stewart is the long-term answer. I think ultimately his best role comes off the bench. I've said that on so many podcasts that I think that is ultimately his role with the Detroit Pistons. But for this upcoming season, it's his starting spot to lose. I really believe that with Isaiah Stewart. It's his spot to lose. And if he makes a jump 3-point shooting wise, maybe he is the answer. But again, I just think you want to eventually get some more athleticism at that 4 spot and have him play a different role with you. So we'll see, though.
Yeah, I did want to answer this question from D Money. Now, we did talk about Lauri Markkanen. Like, what could you possibly give up for a Lauri? I don't know what Utah would even want. I know they drafted your guys, Taylor Hendricks.
Keyonte George, man.
Yeah, Danny Ainge, man, that motherfucker.
You would probably have to give up probably either a Jaden Ivey or an Asor Thompson just to get the conversation going for Lauri. I think Cade Cunningham, no matter what, is off limits. But if you really wanted to bring in Lauri Markkanen, you would have to center the package around either Jaden Ivey or Asor Thompson, because the Utah Jazz, they're not going to want Duren. They already got Walker Kessler. They're not going to want Marvin Bagley because, they also have Taylor Hendricks. I forget. I'm probably blanking on someone else on their roster that I'm forgetting, but they're pretty set. But I think the wing position that would get the conversation going for Lauri Markkanen, either Jaden Ivey or Asor Thompson, and probably even more Asor Thompson than Jaden Ivey, just based on because of how he showed out and showed those flashes in summer league.
I mean, the only reason why we got Bojan is because we had his boy Kelly Olynyk. Like, for being completely honest, that's the only reason why the Pistons have Bojan Bogdanovic is because Danny Ainge worked with Kelly Olynyk in Boston, and that's why he wanted him. Like, Danny Ainge is not getting fleeced in any type of trade. And I think Utah would want a whole lot for him because he just showed that he could be a great player.
Yeah, and they just got John Collins. They're not taking a power forward back for Lauri Markkanen.
Bro, that's such a weird trade too.
Like, that's what I had said, and someone was like, "No, you're going to play Lauri Markkanen at the 3." I'm like, "Yeah, but I mean, I felt like he was kind of exposed at the 3. Offensively, he's all right at the 3, but I mean, I think he can really pick apart teams at the 4 more than the 3."
Yeah, like they did that in Cleveland with him, and that was fine because you had Jared Allen protecting the paint, but I don't really understand the thought process of drafting a Taylor Hendricks, trading for a John Collins, and having Lauri Markkanen on your team. One of those guys are going to have to go. And I think the only reason why they traded for John Collins is because they got him for basically nothing.
See, yeah, but in Cleveland, he was 15-6 playing the 3. And then he jumps up to 25-9.
Yeah.
At the 4. And I know he played power forward in Chicago, but I felt like they were using him. They were just kind of asking him to be a spot up shooter in Chicago, but he was a 15, 18, 14, and 13 guy in Chicago. Then he finally woke up in Utah. I don't see him going back to playing the 3 anytime soon in the NBA.
Yeah, like to me, he would be the perfect fit. Like, I had mentioned you need like that Kevin Love type of power forward who can, spot up from the perimeter and also go in the post and just get you a bucket.
Well, and beat guys off the dribble, like because when you close out on him, like I think there was a number, and I don't know the number, but something on when you close out on him, he looks like Jason Tatum. Basically, it's like the same numbers as Jason Tatum when you drive him off the 3-point line, which is crazy.
Yeah. How about Jalen Brown on that contract? Holy shit.
Okay. Did you see the question was like, what pill would you take? And it was like, you could bring back change an injured player's career, have Jalen Brown's contract money, put Steph Curry and LeBron James in a different era, and I forget the other one. People, if you didn't pick Jalen Brown's contract money, you're crazy. Like, why would I want to just sit back and have my regular life just to watch LeBron James play in the 90s? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense for me. Give me the money and I'll play a video game.
Yeah, I thought that was silly. It's a question from Mr. Jones. Now, this is so funny. Do you think we make a play for Otto Porter or Robert Covington anytime soon to solidify our wing defense without sacrifice shooting?
Dude, I would love either of those guys in a Detroit Pistons uniform for this upcoming season. Either at the 3, no, at the 4. Give me Otto Porter or I don't know. I'm more partial to Robert Covington though. I really like his game. Give me Rocco at the 4 spot for the Pistons this upcoming year. That defense, that 3-point shooting, that versatility where they can switch. That's a dream for me with either of those guys.
I'm so out on Robert Covington, and it's not even funny. Like, he forgot how to shoot. Like I don't even have the numbers pulled up in front of me, but I saw what Otto Porter did in Golden State, and he was a really big contributor. Like, I would bank on Otto Porter more than I would Robert Covington, and I know Robert Covington is a really good defender, but like,
hang on, real quick. Robert Covington, 48 games. He's 32 years old. 48 games for the Los Angeles Clippers this past season. He averaged 6 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, about a steal and a block per game. Shot 45% from the field. What do you think he shot from the 3-point line on 3 attempts per game?
32%.
40%, 39.7.
Man, bullshit. Every time I watched him, he was chucking threes, man. Like, honestly. I had him on fantasy before he was on the Clippers. Man, That guy was ass.
Okay, let me see this real quick.
Good for him though.
So for the Portland Trailblazers, in 2021-22, he shot 34%, 48 games. But in 23 games for the Clippers, he shot 45% from 3 on 5 attempts per game.
It just makes me think because he's playing with a better roster around him.
I mean, he's a career 36%. So, I mean, it's not like he's shooting lights out every season in the NBA. But, yeah, he did shoot 40% from 3 in 48 games. Wow, that's crazy. I did not think it would be that high. I thought it'd be like 36%, maybe 35.
It's like fool's gold with him because anytime I've had him on my fantasy roster, he forgets how to shoot threes. When I don't draft him, he goes nuclear. Like, I didn't draft him this year because I was like, yeah, like he's good to get you steals and blocks and all that stuff. But it's like, I don't know if I would trade for him, honestly.
Otto Porter Jr. though, he played well. He's younger.
Yeah.
He's 29. He played for Toronto, shooting 35% from 3 on 2 attempts per game. But he shot 50% from the field. In Golden State, he shot 37% and 46% from the field. And he's a career 40% 3-point shooter. So, yeah, I don't know. I really like Robert Covington, but I might be with you. I might go Otto Porter Jr. for this team. Maybe. It's a good question.
I just feel like if Covington came here, that 3-point percentage would just plummet. Like, he's playing with like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook. Like, he's playing with elite level players. And not to say that we don't have those star players. I think they could develop into star players, but like, imagine if he had like an Isaiah Livers role where he's just spotting up. Like, is he shooting 40% from three? Probably not.
Well, I mean, all the eyes on defensively are going to be on Cade and Jaden Ivey this year. He'd get a lot of open looks. But
yeah, I don't know.
There might be something playing with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, for 48 games a year.
Maybe I'm just biased towards Covington because he screwed me.
And Otto Porter. And I guess he only did play 8 games for Toronto. Otto Porter Jr. did.
Yeah, he looks like Wilt Chamberlain a lot. It's actually scary.
I love seeing that meme pop up from time to time. It cracks me up.
We'll do one more question. This is from Detroit Pistons for life. Or I don't think it's for life, but it's FL. I'm assuming it's for life. Do you think Troy Weaver is done making moves? I think our roster is a big question mark on it. We could use a trade for some more vets, get rid of Bagley, Wiseman, or Killian. It's kind of a loaded question. I'm going to let you answer that one because I don't even know where to start.
I'm going to go ahead and say he's not done making moves because I think the Bojan trade was in September last offseason. So with Troy Weaver, I don't think he's ever done. He's probably talking to someone on the phone right now. So I'm going to go ahead and say he's not done making moves. I would love to see him get rid of one of those 3 guys, Killian, see if he can bring in a veteran. But I just don't know what either of those guys net you and bring you back on this team, So I'm not surprised Troy is more patient just because I think the value of those 3 guys is a lot lower than what we're thinking. But again, to answer your question, I don't think Troy Weaver's done this offseason.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Answer the first part is a question. I don't. I think there's one more small move that he will make. Don't know what that'll be. Second, I think our roster is a big question mark on it. I could kind of agree with that, but I could also disagree with that. It kind of depends, like, what's the question mark? Like, is it the too many bigs, maybe too many young guys? Maybe it's, lack of small forward depth. Maybe you could kind of expand on that. We could trade for some more vets. Okay, yeah, we could. We definitely could. I just don't know, like, who's out there. Do you want to bring back Magruder? Do you want to take a chance on a vet that's not signed? Like, I don't even know what vets are available anymore. I'd have to look on Spot Track right now.
So I guess, would you be disappointed if this was the roster to start the season?
I wouldn't, because I think it has potential, and I think it solely focuses on your young core. That's what they're really banking on.
That's good.
To his last question, get rid of Bagley, Wiseman, or Killian. Now, they tried getting rid of Killian.
Yep.
Didn't work. Because we didn't want Tim Hardaway Jr. and JaVale McGee, which can't really blame them. Even though Tim Hardaway is, a U of M guy, he's really streaky. And JaVale McGee is just at a point of his career where I think he's a good vet, but you're not going to play him a full 82 games. Like, he kind of reminds me of, you remember Joel Anthony?
Oh, yeah.
During the Van Gundy era? That's what it would remind me of. Just a good locker room vet. And when you need him to play, he can play. I don't really know if there's going to be a whole lot of teams lined up for Wiseman. And not to say that he's not a good player. It's just the tape on him is so limited, and we really don't know what he could possibly be. I feel like, to me, he's kind of in the same tier right now as Bol. And what I mean by that is there's talent there. You might give him a rotational spot, but you're probably not going to get a whole lot for it. And you have to remember he's on a $12 million rookie deal still. So I don't know if there's too many teams willing to take on a $12 million cap hit for James Wiseman. Same with Bagley, even though Bagley does provide a little bit more. He's a player that has more tape, and you kind of know what you're going to get from him. You're going to get that 14-7. It's going to be a low post threat, but defensively, it's not there on a night-to-night basis. I mean, there's nights where, he does try. He tries to block shots, but he gets in foul trouble. But I think for your question, just to get more vets, yeah, you could get more vets, but I wouldn't expect a fair trade. It would probably be a lopsided trade because these guys don't have the highest trade value.
It's a good answer.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I think it's going to be such a small move that Pistons fans are going to see the notification from Woj and just roll their eyes, like, "Wow, really? Him?" Like, it's not going to be a move where like they're like going crazy making a reaction video to it. Like, it's going to be such a small, under the radar move that we're like, okay, cool, let's get started.
I mean, the move could be like they sign Towson or for the full season. It could be something like that.
Or they convert Malcolm into a regular contract because I think there's something there. I think his passing and I think his shooting, even though I think he's going to be like a G League star. Personally, I think he's just going to cook in the G League. Personally,
we'll see. I mean, like, but what we're getting at, it's going to be a move like that for the Pistons. I mean, I wouldn't. Again, I'm not putting it past Troy to make a trade and bring someone in, like an older veteran that we might think is on his way out, but only time will tell.
Yeah, it's just
Troy will do.
Like, I don't think Troy would give up on Wiseman because Troy wanted Wiseman. Like, if the Pistons would have gotten a top 3 pick, Wiseman would have been at the top of his board. Like, he's even said that. He's mentioned that before. It's a guy that he was really high on, and he got him for pennies on the dollar. He didn't really have to trade a whole lot to get him. I don't think it's Wiseman. Like, out of the 3, it would probably be Killian out of anybody.
We'll see.
But we can wrap this podcast up. We've been on for our normal 2 hours. Only Pistons podcast that does a 2-hour show, and we're proud of it. But why don't you tell the people where they can find the podcast, how they can support it, and subscribe to Spotify, Apple, and Google.
So before I get into that, don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LansCaprosi or on Threads or X. Follow me.
I'm going to say, you mean X?
X @LansCaprosi, and then follow me at Threads @LansCaprosi. Follow my man, my co-host Anthony at Pistons Talk across all social media platforms. But thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk podcast. Do us a favor, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.